Hello, I am here with...
Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Sanchez. I'm one of the co-founders of Bonnee.
And I'm Meredith Bay. I'm also one of the co-founders of Bonnee with Vanessa. And we have a third co-founder, Maritza Sanchez Schubert.
So let's start with the background. So what inspired you to launch this app?
So we love fashion. That's really why we started Bonnee. But we noticed how expensive it was getting and how inaccessible it really was. We found that thrifting, the prices were just so incredibly high. There was a lot of competition, and we started swapping amongst ourselves. And we thought, you know what? There should be a way for us to bring this to a bigger audience.
And also what really launched us as a entrepreneurship trio was, Vanessa and Maritza are sisters, and I met them 11 years ago while working at the Perez Art Museum. We all three work there together, and we just started talking about our hopes, our dreams, what we want to do. We wanted to all be business owners, business creators, and so it sort of has evolved over the years.
So cool that you guys have like this, this thing in common. I also love fashion. Fashion is just so universal. You can do a lot with it. It inspires people. So with that being said, what inspired the whole clothing swap app? Like what really solidified Bonnee as like, this is what people need for an app?
So we had been swapping clothes amongst ourselves and our friends for years, and it's something that we just love to do. Instead of buying something new, we decided, why not swap it? Why not borrow from each other? We realized that there was a huge opportunity for this, and we wanted to bring this to the market. Just because we live here in Miami doesn't mean that we don't have a style twin somewhere else across the country. So we really wanted to make sure that it was inclusive, and just for everyone to be able to do it from home, from school, from wherever. All you need is a phone.
Well, and just a little bit of an anecdote. So Vanessa and I originally were tossing around an idea that we had for a dating app. And as we were doing that, and we were sort of in the discovery phase of could we potentially make this a business, Maritza went over to Germany, to Europe, and started seeing how digital swapping was such a big part of life in Germany, and really brought that back to us after her vacation, and thought this is something we could really do here. We already are doing it.
I also thought that too. Like this really comes maybe from a European standpoint, as you know, they're very like environmentally conscious and the whole. And I think before we dive into the next one, which actually number 3 really ties into this, well, I'll just say it. What gap did you see in the fashion or sustainability space that you wanted to fill?
Yeah, so the more that we learned about the fashion industry, we realized all of these kind of scary and alarming statistics. Fashion is the second largest polluter. So many tons of water are used to produce a t-shirt, a pair of jeans. And we realized that we still need clothes, and there was a huge opportunity for swapping. A lot of the clothes in the US, we throw away an estimated 82 pounds of clothing per person every year. And a lot of that clothes is actually brand new with tags a lot of the time. And people are just throwing away their clothes because they don't have anything else to do with it, right? So we wanted to come up with that alternative to people. Instead of throwing something away, you can just post it on Bonnee, just because you don't like it anymore, or it was gifted to you for whatever reason. You don't want that item of clothing anymore. You can just swap it instead and find something that you do like.
We also noticed too, especially going back to Europe, and we see that starting to trickle here, is the laws around textile waste, textile recycling, and there's really becoming a mandatory law across all Europe, the European Union, where you are not going to be able to throw out any textiles. So we see that trickling here. In California has passed a few laws, and so we know that that's kind of where the future is headed in the U.S. too, or we hope at least.
I really like that whole concept of like, being environmentally conscious. As you mentioned yourself, these are new clothes that are being thrown away. I didn't know that. That's really shocking. Like, what? Okay, so this is more of the technicality of the app itself. So how does the app work for like a first time user that really wants to get? I have a lot of my followers who are into the clothing swap community in Miami. And how can you tell them like, hey, this is like how you get into Bonnee?
Sure. So our app is really simple to use. We're available on Google and iPhone. So you can just go either into the Google Play Store or the App Store and download the app. You go through a simple sign up process. And then once you're on the app, you can go ahead and browse and see the hundreds of items that we have listed on there. But really, what you need to do is for every item that you post on Bonnee, you get 1 credit. And with that credit, you can take any item, or we refer to as a swiping. So you can swipe any item posted by any other user on the platform. And all you have to do is pay for the shipping itself. So Bonnee is simple to use, and it's really a great alternative because you save so much money.
Well, and I think a lot of us are always looking for ways to be sustainable, and to make a difference and to make an impact. And, the market hasn't quite caught up with what we can all afford in terms of sustainable clothing. And so this is a way to take that dress from, Anthropologie, The Gap, something like that, and actually create and lengthen the life of that piece of clothing. So we all can do our part, and if we're not buying sort of sustainably resourced materials just yet.
Giving the clothes a second chance. Yeah. And it ties in again with the whole clothing swap community. We can talk a little bit more because I know the nexus of sustainability and culture really ties into that. Okay, so is the app geared more toward casual users or people who are really into fashion and thrift?
It's a little bit of a mix. We always say that Bonnee is for everyone. You don't have to be a fashionista or a thrifter or even a swapper to enjoy it. So Bonnee really is there for anyone, but we have seen that it's kind of been a mix of people who are interested in Bonnee. We have people who really love the sustainable angle of it, and are there because they want to keep good clothes out of landfills. And then there's other people who were previously on resale apps, who realized that they were a little bit too expensive, or going to in-person thrift stores, and it was just too expensive. And they discovered Bonnee, and they found that it was a great alternative. So Bonnie is really for everyone.
What kind of items can people swap, or are there limits and guidelines?
We do have guidelines, and we also have rating systems. So we want to make sure that we are protecting our users, so much in the same way that you would rate a purchase or rate an experience in an Uber or a Lyft. You can do the same on Bonnee. But when it comes to our guidelines, it's unlimited. You can post anything you want to get, part with. But we do have rules about what you can and cannot post. So for instance, you're not going to post your socks. You're not going to post your undergarments or something like that on the app. And we do take measures to remove those. And we give a warning to the person who has posted that. And we say, listen, this is against our guidelines, but please keep using the app.
Really post whatever it is that you are willing to you want to get rid of. It could be a concert tee. It could be a formal dress. It could be a nice pair of shoes, sneakers. Really, there is no limit as to what you can post.
I really love that flexibility because I've been on resale apps, many. We could go down the list of all of them. And I feel like it just kind of gets too it gets too cluttered already in those apps, and there's nothing refreshing. This concept, in my opinion, is very refreshing because you're giving it not only just a second chance and the sustainability aspect, but also just it's fun. I love clothing swaps. I'm a huge clothing swapper. I love clothes to begin with. It's a problem. But now that I could do it in a fun way through an app, I'm really excited to really check out the app. All right. So now we're going to really dive deep into the sustainability and culture. How do you think clothing swaps contribute to sustainable fashion?
So as we were saying earlier, there's so much good clothes that's ending up in landfills. I mean, if you were to Google just a clothing landfill, you can just see mountains and mountains of clothes. So making sure that we're keeping good clothes out of landfills is really important to us. We love fashion, but it doesn't mean it has to come at a cost to our planet, right? So sustainability and being eco-friendly is a huge basis of our platform, of our app, and just our mission in general.
And I think from a culture aspect, swapping, we see it through communities throughout the US and Europe. And, it's such a part of bringing us together. People unite over so many things, art, sports, music, but people also unite over clothing and fashion and expressing yourself and authenticity. And those are really, basis of our entire company is really to be yourself, to express yourself. Everyone's welcome. And we feel like that's how clothing swaps are in community. And we're trying to digitize that and make that available on the app, that same sort of feeling of connecting with people over style.
Really love that. That really ties into the community aspect. It makes it more than it expands more than just Miami, because you guys started in Miami, right? Yeah, that's cool. That's, it. I've always called Miami the Silicon Beach. I don't know if you've ever heard of like Silicon Valley. Well, Silicon Beach. Yeah. So maybe that name sticks later on in the future. You never know. Okay, so do you think Miami's unique fashion culture and climate can make a good fit for this kind of app?
Yes, definitely. I mean, Miami is such a fashionable city. Anywhere you go, you just see people dressed to the nines, whether they're going to the grocery store, whether they're going to a restaurant, whatever it is. Miami's such a fashionable city, but it's also an incredibly expensive city. So not everyone can afford these expensive threads that everyone's wearing, right? So we think that Bonnee is really a great opportunity for people to show off their style, their fashions without breaking the bank.
You mentioned climate, and I know sort of from a fashion cultural standpoint, but also from the sense of our actual climate. Miami, as residents of Miami, we're at the forefront of climate change and sea level rise, and we cannot turn a blind eye to that. And so it's sort of, Bonnee really has a home here because we all want to be fashionable. But we also care about what's happening to our earth too. So, and we see it especially with the sea level rise.
That being said, Miami is developing at such a fast pace that makes you really wonder how can we help make that footprint, an environmental footprint, less than what it already is. And I think this is a really good way of doing it, and it really promotes in a really fun way that people, and maybe this itself can introduce to people who have never done a clothing swap before. Some people are really, every time I mention oh, I got this from a clothing swap, they're like, what is that? It's a different type of culture that people just don't know about, and so that's really cool. As far as the sustainability and culture questions, and we have here, have you noticed any trends in what people are swapping in Miami specifically?
So graphic tees, we see a lot of those going on our platforms. And also when we do in-person events, people tend to gravitate towards graphic tees. You can dress them up, you can dress them down. It doesn't matter your gender, it doesn't matter your size. Everyone loves a good graphic tee or a concert tee. So I would say that that's probably one of the more popular items that we've seen being swiped on the app.
I think Miami as a fashion city, we have so much freedom here. So it's kind of like so many things are appealing to different folks in Miami because it's just like anything goes in this city. And we don't battle with extreme seasons. So really, it's kind of an easy place to start swapping, and you know what will work, you know what the temperature's going to be, you know what the climate's going to be, more or less. So
my fair share of concert tees, So I really do love them for both ways, dressing them up and dressing them down. So community building questions. So how are you building and maintaining a sense of community within the app? As you've mentioned, this app is not just Miami based, but you can expand on that. Like, is it the United States? Is it going worldwide?
right now it's the United States. It is going worldwide, but that will be in the future. So we're really creating a sense of community. I mentioned earlier the rating system and the review system, and we're adding features around that. So that also creates a dialogue happening in the app. We have people can post their outfits of the day, much like you would an Instagram story. You can post your outfit of the day. You can like, comment, share. If you see something your friend might like, you can send that to them and say, I think you might like this. You can follow each other's closets on the app. And we're always adding features, and we continue to have updates in the app. So if you have the app, make sure you have it updated because we're constantly updating it with new features.
And that's so cool that this is an app that not only is it just active within its users, but it's active within the updates things, the update system. And I think that a lot of people like that because then what I've seen in other resale apps, I feel like they get stuck in their old ways. And that's why, as a user myself, I've gotten bored of those resale apps. And this one really attracts my attention as a user, so I'm very intrigued into really using it. Okay, so are there any in-person events, local partnerships, or new ways that you've created to grow your user base?
To get out there as much as possible. But when you think about community partners, I would say that Miami-Dade College is probably one of our best supporters. We actually got our start at Miami-Dade College. When we first had our idea of Bonnee, we entered a pitch competition over at Miami-Dade College's. What's it? The Idea Center. And we won. Yeah. And that really snowballed and really, we grew from there. We had a really amazing mentor, Cece, who really was there to walk us through the entire process of building an app, doing surveys to make sure that there was a need in the community for an app like Bonnee. And we continue to work with them with their community events. So once a month, they have a movie and market night, and we have a spot there where we're able to host in-person swaps and connect with people in the community. So we like to be out and about as much as possible.
Actually, most recently, I think Vanessa does the best job of this, but she spoke to a student-run digital agency at Miami-Dade College. Was it 2 weeks ago, I think? Yeah, and talked about her journey as an entrepreneur, as a female entrepreneur, and really talked to the students about what it's been like and what our path has been like starting Bonnee. So, we like to be involved as much as we can in swaps and things that are happening, but also from things that are adjacent to what we're doing. We care about helping other people, follow their dreams and start their companies. So Vanessa really does a lot of that, though. She's our talker.
Okay, so with that being said, that was really interesting that you're really targeting the young audience. Like kids going to college. I went to Miami-Dade. Shout out to the Sharks. Um, and it's just so fun because like the youth, as I call them, they have such like an amazing point of view of like let's make the earth better. And so I definitely see why that like these events really have a good hit with you guys, because that's what the kids want to do. They want to make sure that we're sustainable, that we have we're here for the long haul.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay. Okay, so this is the next questions are all business related. And how did you fund your project? How did you get it off the ground?
So we are self-funded. We are a trio of women, and we have self-funded our app from the creation to the tech to launching it right now. So we don't have any outside investment. So Bonnee really is our baby, and we want to make sure that we grow in a way that makes sense to us, in a way that really the vision that we have for Bonnee.
We grow and we scale, investment is going to be a necessary and wanted part of the funding of our business. But certainly, that investor will have to align with us and our vision and our culture. But yeah, we have an open mind to that. But yes, we've been balancing work, families, and bootstrapping our startup.
Incredible. First of all, congratulations to all three of you. Because to start a business is one thing, to start an app is another thing. And I've actually talked to, so to give you a little context, within my whole podcast and journey through the Miami, it's like a case study. It's been 2 years that I've been doing this, and I've been talking to everybody, and I've talked to people who started apps, and most of them really use like investors. Like they don't really just do it themselves. That's unheard of. So for the fact is like you have this going and you just keep it going, it's incredible. So the time will come whenever somebody who does align to your views, and that will make it worthwhile. I meant to say like this will definitely propel it to be worldwide. With other people who invest. But that's so cool. I love that. That's awesome. Okay, now we're gonna get into like what are the challenges of starting a startup in Miami specifically?
So I would say that because we are a fashion app, we're not always taken seriously when we go to events when it comes to tech. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. We are three women. We are a fashion focused app. So sometimes people will look at us and be like, oh, fashion's not really our thing, or they don't really see the potential of fashion. The fashion industry is huge. And the sustainable market is only growing. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that. So it's having to have those conversations and show people the value of fashion, the value of us. I think that's probably been one of the bigger hurdles that we've kind of uncovered here.
I'd say too, Bonnee is really primarily at its core a consumer to consumer, a C2C business that relies heavily on our users creating content, our users making the post, and to network and word of mouth, and our so that has been a challenge, in that format of business. I think a lot of the businesses here or startups here, they're B2B or B2C. So that has been one thing that, coupled with what Vanessa said, has been a challenge.
Definitely see, I've been to networking events, so I definitely understand where you guys are coming from. That sometimes if you don't fit a certain criteria, a certain mold, maybe it's harder to get your foot in the door. But I feel like you're breaking that space, you're making it open because it's such a unique perspective, and you're providing such a great service to the communities as far as swapping the environment. It's a lot of stuff. You look at it has a really great messages in general. So that's why in my mind I was like, wait, is this a nonprofit?
I would say too, you mentioned breaking the mold a little bit. I think the way we three view it, and we have experienced this, is it's actually our superpower and what sort of propels us front and center a lot of times in a lot of these sort of networking events or tech events, is that we do not fit the mold in the types of founders that we are, in the business that we've started. And so a lot of times that actually works to our benefit, and we take a lot of pride in that, and that's what keeps us going too, is that we're doing something different.
Okay, vision in future. What's your next for the app? Any features or expansions?
Yeah, so we want to have a bigger presence all around the country. So we want to do pop-up events across the US. I think that's going to be a big thing for us in the next few months. So expanding our presence beyond Miami, although we are based here in Miami, we want to be in other places, other cities. Thrifting is so huge in other communities. So we want to be in person, meeting our users, meeting potential users. So I think that's going to be really exciting for us.
And I think, expanding our market, and there's a lot of ways to do that, whether we're making the user experience better, whether there's a diversity of inventory and clothing and accessories that are on the app. So there's a lot of ways we can expand different markets and different audiences. And I think, especially this summer, Vanessa and I, especially, I think we're going to be a bit on the road and a bit, bringing Bonnee to other parts of the city. So have clothes will travel.
Fun to, really broaden your horizons there. Okay. So what would you consider into expanding into other cities, or niches? Like, let's say we did talk about going to other cities. So you can actually go more in depth of like, okay, what about, children's clothes, more like formal wear, like wedding gowns or things like that. What can you give to the people?
Mentioned formal. So, the thing about swapping, about secondhand, about fashion and expressing ourselves, it's such a human experience. And when you go through a regular calendar year and think about all of the different experiences you have at different ages, at different points in your life, like right now we're in prom season, we're in graduation season. A lot of people will go into the wedding season, they've been engaged. And so at all of these points along the way, wardrobes need to be updated, closets need to be refreshed, clothing maybe doesn't fit you or fits you, doesn't fit your style. So there's a lot of ways that we're trying to connect. And every time, like, I think about it all the time, I see all these young people, having prom right now. And I'm like, oh gosh, you mentioned formal. Like, how could this become something where it's like Bonnee prom or Bonnee formal? So I think we're always thinking of that. And thinking of other audiences.
I love that. Living for that. All right, let me see. Okay. So how do you measure success for the app? Not just in terms of downloads or like number of users, like what does Bonnee, like how do you know Bonnee is being successful?
So we love it when we get an email or a DM of someone who says that they've enjoyed being on Bonnee, that they found that special item that they were looking for. So for us, it's not just, big numbers. It's that individual connection with our users, knowing that they found that great dress for that wedding that they wanted to go to, or whatever it is. We just love getting feedback from our users and knowing that they're enjoying what we've put out there.
I wanted to ask you this. What inspired you to call it Bonnee?
So a few years ago, me and our third co-founder, Maritza, my sister, we went to the spice. see the Spice Girls reunion tour in the UK, and we did a stopover in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and we noticed that everyone was saying the term Bonnee, and it was like a Bonnie lad or Bonnie lass, so someone who was good looking, someone who was attractive. And we came back and started saying that amongst the three of us. We told Meredith, and we just started saying that word. So when we decided to come up with this app, we were kind of floating some names out there, and we realized, you know what about Bonnee? Anyone can be Bonnee, anyone can feel Bonnee. So that's really the story behind it. And we did change the spelling a little bit, so it's BONNEE.
Actually, such a cute story. It gives such a like cute little background, like because it's such a pretty little name to it, you know. So it's like cute. I love it. I love it. All right, so then we're gonna get to the closing. Before we get to the closing, do you have any other things you'd like to say?
I think just a thank you to everyone who's downloaded the app, anyone who has made a swipe. We're just really excited that something that an idea that we came up with is now a product that's out there on the market, that people are using it, that people are enjoying it. So we're just really thank you to everyone who is interested in it, who's interested in sustainable fashion. It's so great to be able to see that people are enjoying something that we put out there. So thank you.
And I think also too, we've talked about sustainability and having an impact and, decreasing our footprint, our individual footprint. And Vanessa mentioned how excited we get, like with every swipe, with every swap. We really enjoy it, watching it from the back end, and hearing from our users. But it's really important. And we think about this all the time. If I have a shirt that I swiped that would have ended up in a landfill, you have a dress that would have ended up in a landfill, you have pants that would have ended up in a landfill. When you multiply this by thousands of users, tens of thousands of users, hundreds of thousands of users, millions of users, we're really keeping an insane amount of textiles out of landfills. So it's just a small action, but collectively, Bonnee means so much for the impact we can have.
And I really see that sense of unity within you guys as the founders, and it's just good to have that rich connection. There's a lot of, and this is my hot take, a lot of the times I've met people who have apps, they're kind of just there like, I'm here to make some money. I'm here to, have a name because I have an app. But I think, not that I just think, I know that you guys are genuinely doing this because this is your passion. And I think, honestly, it's always good to do something that you're passionate about because then what's the point? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And now we get to the closing remarks. So, how can you tell listeners, what you're doing or how can they get involved? Like whether it's your in-person events or your social media presence or the actual app itself, like how can you get people going to
find our app by going to our website at www. Bonnee, that's BONNEE.co. Certainly you can go into your favorite app store, whether it's Google Play or Apple. You will find Bonnee there. We are on all socials at Swap Bonnee. You can find us there. You can send us a message. We're looking always for partners. We're looking for feedback. We'd love to hear from the users, good, bad, and everything in between. Certainly we're looking for community partners. So we're happy to come to any event and support different events, even if it's not fashion focused. Your next beach cleanup, we'll be there. Let's go and talk about textile recycling and reusing and reducing waste.
I love that because it really, again, brings back to the whole concept of like community, not just in the online space, but also in the in-person space that people love. And I'm sure with time, it will just keep expanding and growing so much. All right. So this is the last question. And then I'll add something at the very end because I got inspired by what you guys said. So what's one piece of advice that you'd give to somebody in Miami who wants to start a purpose-driven business?
I think just go for it. I think it's simple as that. When we first started thinking about creating Bonnee, we had a lot of conversations with people, good, bad conversations, but ultimately we realized that we were so passionate about creating our business, about sustainable fashion, and we realized that we just had to go for it. So I think that is probably the first and biggest piece of advice. You can always be worried about what's going to happen, whether good or bad, but ultimately you have to have faith in yourself and just go for whatever it is that you're passionate about.
I also say don't go it alone. I think one of our greatest strengths is the fact that we are 3 very united partners, very cohesive team, and we have the same purpose. And so I think, there's always a community around a purpose. Find those people that you share that with, and create a group, because when I'm down, they're up. When Vanessa's down, I'm up. So we're always supporting each other, and so that would be my advice. Like, do it with others.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? So that is so great. So then we'll conclude it. We'll add the concluding remarks here. So how can people find you? I believe we did say your Instagrams and everything, right? We got that covered. So I want to say thank you so much for doing this, for really showing how your passions really come true and how you're working on this. And people will definitely keep going because they love the clothing swap community. When I always go, is like a special group of people who just love to just fall in love with clothes, and that's just the best thing out of it. Do you want to add anything to that?
A secondhand buyer. She does not buy clothing secondhand. She's not a swapper. She has never done that before. When we launched, she's been one of our biggest supporters, of course, my sister, but she said, I can't even believe this. This is so amazing that, that I can get all of these clothes and I'm just paying for shipping. And some of them have tags, and I'm in shock. So that's the cool thing about Bonnee is we're definitely, reaching folks like you who are so committed to swapping and enjoy swapping and love it. But then there's, the opportunity for Bonnee is to introduce it to people who like never did it before. And they're like, wow, this is so great.
This has really made me connect to different communities. As you mentioned, you want to connect with partners. One of the people they have a nonprofit. It's called Debris Free Oceans. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Of course, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so they actually host and collaborate with I want to say Recircle Miami.
Oh
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And also there's also like Repurpose Miami. There's so many like of those communities that I will definitely DM you and definitely give you in contact, because like I mentioned before, I've basically have studied Miami for 2 years and I have all this knowledge, and I just like I don't know what to do with all this knowledge. So if you ever need some market research on Miami for free, just literally just let's chat and let's
love
just do
that.
it.
You're the next Bonnee ambassador.
Well, I do love clothes, so that's not a problem for me. I have a lot of clothes to share because there's only so much I can wear.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you again, and that's it.